Fish on First Live is presented by About the Fans. We've partnered with them this season on a brand new merchandise collection featuring t-shirts, polos, hats, and other accessories that Marlins fans will absolutely love. Head on over to aboutthefans.com to shop the FOF collection. Use our special coupon code FOF10 to save 10% off your order. Enter code FOF10 at checkout to save 10% and continue supporting what we do over here.
This is Griffin Conan.
This is Xavier Edwards.
This is Liam Hicks.
This is Dave Myers, and you're watching Fish on First Live.
Fish on First Live, presented by About the Fans. We are back for another Marlins series preview show here in the middle of a very long Marlins homestand. I'm Eli Sussman, Isaac Azoot to my side, Nate Karsmer right beneath me. Use our promo code FOF10 at aboutthefans.com to save 10% off shirts like this one. And hats, stickers, other accessories, polos. I just got the notification, Nate, your polo is been shipped off, so it should be arriving this week for sure. Long overdue. But yeah, so we're talking about the Marlins, as we always do. Talking about a Marlins series loss, as we seemingly always do, because they've lost 6 straight series. The only natural place to start, though, Nate, is with the end of this series. I like to finish with the very end. In the final ending of this series, they salvaged the series finale with closer Tyler Phillips on the mound right here. Louis Adiowais pulled together these numbers. This is not it's unusual for him to be closing a game, but he's been pitching extremely well now for a very large share of this season. And it felt like time to give him his flowers a little bit here. The fact that he's been preventing runs at this kind of level, and he had his own semi-viral moment in the aftermath of this with the post-game interview that he gave to Marlins Radio with his entrance. People becoming now more aware of the slapping routine that he does when he comes in from the bullpen. What do you think about Phillips? How legit is he at this stage of the season for a guy that used to be a starter but is now a pretty important piece of this Marlins bullpen?
Yeah, he's been doing it since June. It seems like he's so efficient at rolling ground balls. He talked about it in that, like you said, that viral interview. Just that the Marlins organization has unlocked with all their guys, all their starters, all their relievers, all the position players. Whatever they do well, that's what they're going to focus on, and that's what the front office and the coaches want them to do. And the guy can roll ground balls like none other. He's been doing it for the past 3 months now, and if it works in the 9th, sure. It feels like ever since he's been slapping himself since that Yankee series, he's been getting like 4 or 5 pitch innings and then guys roll over, and that's it. For sure, should be getting more late average. I know Kevin has been very harping on the fact that he's not a high leverage late inning guy, but until he proves us otherwise, I don't think that you cannot give him that opportunity, especially the way the Marlins have been slumping in the past couple of weeks. So definitely approve it. That guy is probably the most viral player on the Marlins this season, I'd say. Outside of Stowers, you obviously had that Barstool appearance with Kyle, and now this interview is going viral with Steven. Shout out to Steven, by the way. The fact that you're able to keep your composure when that guy is, look like he's going to kill you, it's very impressive work. So hopefully Tyler keeps it going. Eli touched on the fact that this guy could really stick around for 2026 and beyond. If it somehow falls through as a late inning guy, you can go back to more of a swingman role, a little bit of long relief, as he does have that starting experience. So very interesting find. I've said it in the past that Peter Bendit's with just a lot of bullpen guys, especially those waivers. Throw it at a wall. If it sticks, then you got a guy, and that's what he's done, and that's what he's going to continue to do. Tyler Phillips, just another one in that long lineage.
Yeah, and the personality really fits bullpen. Honestly, you see bullpen guys have by far the weirdest personalities of anyone on that roster, and he fits that to a T. I guess the only thing a little bit concerning with his numbers lately, he just doesn't strike out as many guys as you'd like a high leverage reliever to do. But everything else, he is preventing runs, like Eli said, at an incredible rate, and doing it in the most important innings of a Major League Baseball game. And coming off a 32 pitch appearance on Saturday, I was going to ask Clayton McCullough, but I was being to it that, 32 pitches, Ronnie Henriquez hadn't thrown that many. You felt comfortable enough to go with Tyler Phillips after he threw that many pitches. And he referenced spring training, him being stretched out. Well, I'm sorry, earlier in the season, he wasn't with spring training in the Marlins. He was able to get stretched out, guys mentioned he was previously a starter, and he's able to go back-to-back days, high leverage innings, as well as with throwing as many pitches as that. So it's a really important asset for this team.
Yeah, it's a worthy reminder of how he got to the Marlins. He was DFA'd at the end of spring training by the Phillies. It's a glorified waiver claim. The Marlins give up cash considerations to get him. And I remember my first instinct was maybe he's rotation depth because the Marlins had a couple of spring injuries. And then my other thought was, well, he's out of here as soon as they get anybody else healthy. He felt like the very lowest guy on the active roster in terms of job security, and he didn't even pitch that well early on. I still remember pretty clearly when Augustine made his debut. That was Max Meyer's 14 strikeout game, and the Marlins had a commanding lead, and then Tyler Phillips comes in and he gives up 3 runs. He gave a home run to somebody on the Reds in that one, and they end up winning the game. But I remember thinking, even at that point, a few weeks into the year, like, this guy's just he's a nobody. That I could not have imagined him being on the team this long, and pretty much since then running. If you want to stretch out that sample going back like 4 months, it's a sub-3 ERA. You mentioned the ground ball rate, especially since the All-Star break, it's been in the 60s percentile compared to first season overall. It's well into the 50s, but it's been like straight up elite since then. And as Isaac mentioned, he still doesn't get any strikeouts. So that sets a pretty low ceiling on who he's going to be as a reliever. If he's just not missing bats, if he's striking out 6 guys per 9 innings, even during a good stretch of time, that is not that's not something that modern front offices really value very much at all, unless you're getting outs. And the fact that he is still getting outs and a lot of weak contact, a lot of ground ball contact is that's been an interesting twist. And what Nate was alluding to is, I wrote up on the site, there's just not that many guys that are locked into this bullpen moving forward. It's going to be, assuming he returns to full health, it's going to be Anthony Bender, and it's definitely going to be Ronnie Henriquez. And then there's like a half step drop off to Calvin Fauché, who's been up and down this year. He's been all right, but not who he was at times in 2024. And then it's kind of wide open. There are guys we like in the minors that should get an opportunity that haven't already. And then there's a lot of guys that are hurt because Andrew Nardi is going to wind up missing the whole year, it seems like. Declan Cronin might miss parts of next year after suffering what looks like a pretty serious arm injury. And Jesus Tinoco is definitely going to miss part of next year. He might not even be on the team, unfortunately, as he's about to undergo surgery on his forearm as well. So it's just kind of wide open at this point in a way that they're going to be relying on guys converted, maybe some converted starters that get squeezed out of that mix. I think that's part of it. I brought up Max Meyer inadvertently. Max Meyer is kind of the first guy that comes to mind that all of a sudden it's getting really crowded on this rotation depth chart. Maybe Max is part of that solution, that he's a guy that theoretically you might like him a little bit more in high leverage situations than Phillips if he's able to make that transition. But it's still pretty theoretical because they haven't even started that process yet.
I think what else is huge with a guy like Phillips is that you've seen so many times this season that there are no set rules in this bullpen. I remember back in June, we saw Ronnie Enriquez pitching in the 4th. A couple of weeks ago, we didn't see him pitch at all, and then we've seen him work in the 9th. Phillips, I remember that Milwaukee series up at American Family Field. Guy threw 40 pitches in that game 2 on Saturday. He can do that. He can do that role. He can do high leverage. He can come in with runners on, get you an out or two. So I think that adds a lot of value with him as well. The guy's going to be a bulldog no matter which role you throw him to, which, like you guys have said, that's exactly what you want in a reliever. So that just adds to him. He's going to go out wherever role you need him to do. He's going to do it well. So I think that is definitely that you should put stock in that, and that if the Marlins need a guy like him, they can do whatever role they want, and that adds a lot of value with him going for next year's bullpen.
I think that's long enough for a Tyler Phillips segment, don't you think? So also looking back at that last game, Isaac, you were there on Sunday. A good Yuri performance as well, of getting all the way into the 7th inning before he allowed his first run, and even that was an inherited run. And Luis Castillo going into the Marlins Hall of Fame. So what was that whole experience like? Because I know that he also had a lot of his teammates in attendance for that.
Yeah, it was a good one. It was a very nice presentation. He gave a speech in English and in Spanish, and he had a whole lot of teammates there. More I guess former Marlins for the Luis Castillo introduction than any of the previous 3 Hall of Famers so far this year. You even had Hanley Ramirez, who I don't think ever overlapped Luis Castillo, so I found that interesting. But I guess I'm just supporting a fellow Marlin great. Charles Johnson was there. Jeff Conine was there. Tony Perez was there, Hall of Famer. So a lot of Marlins were there to celebrate Luis Castillo's induction to the Marlins Hall of Fame, the 4th and final one for this year. I guess we'll talk about it on another stream who you think could be going into there next year. And regarding the game, yeah, Yuri Perez, in my opinion, aside from that Baltimore game, which he went 7 innings, completed 7 innings, the only time in his career that he's done that, he looked as good as I've ever seen him. The fastball was extremely impressive on Sunday against Toronto. He was almost effectively pitching backwards towards these hitters, starting them off with off speed and then going at them with the fastball, and he's doing it extremely effectively. And then obviously Jacob Marcy came through with the biggest hit of the game, bases clearing double, I believe, in the 4th or 5th inning to really put the game away. Yuri ran into a little bit of trouble there in the 7th, where he gave up the leadoff squibbler hit to Bo Bichette, your MVP, and then walked the next guy. And I thought they would let him face Varsho, given that he had struck out Varsho both times. But I think that at that point he was at a career high 94 pitches. Mercola had seen enough, and they went to Lake Bacher. A really questionable decision, just given the fact that Yuri had taken care of Varsho both times, and he was still only at 94 pitches. Thought he'd face one more hitter. Yuri also thought he would face one more hitter, but they went with Bacher, and Varsho immediately made it closer of a ball game than it needed to be. But in the end, it was moot as the Marlins ended up winning an insurance run by Agustin Ramirez later in the 7th, and then obviously the aforementioned Tyler Phillips closed it out. A much needed win to at least salvage the finale of that 6th consecutive loss series.
Mm-hmm. We were thinking that Alex Carver might be on this stream. I was going to bring it up to him, but sneakily, a good series for Troy Johnston. He had multi-hit games on both Saturday and Sunday, 2 hits in each of those. The base running has been a little bit questionable. He got not only caught stealing this weekend, but he also got thrown out at the plate in a pretty important spot. I think on Saturday is when he got thrown out at the plate. And that would have been it was questionable to send him in the first place. Right. Yeah. But not to take away from his hitting, because he's now up to 267. Nate, where is your confidence level in Troy? Because I think a lot of us at this point we didn't really have strong expectations for what this was going to amount to. Kind of pleasantly surprised he got called up in the first place, but now he's been playing a lot lately. I think he started 4 of the last 5 or 6 games overall, and the fact that things are leveling out, because he did look a little bit overmatched at times those first few weeks. And this is certainly the closest that he's looked to resembling the professional hitter that we followed in the minors for years.
Yeah, I assume he was just trying to do too much, as we see with a lot of guys that just come up, especially for a guy like Troy, who's been, as we all know, fought in AAA for so long. But he's looks like he's finally found his swing. How about the production at first base? We've been very bullish on Eric Wagaman all year, but all of a sudden, that guy's OPSing in the 8 in June and in August. So shout out to Eric Wagaman. He's been great as of late. I didn't tell me 2 weeks ago I was going to say that. I would have called you crazy, but here we are. And with Troy, not just at first, he's actually been surprisingly all right in the outfield. It's obviously some errors here and there, some bad reads, but I think it was yesterday there was a rope hit to him. He got there, so that's a work in progress. But at least he's somewhat serviceable out there. He can, just adds value as well. But with the bat, striking out a little bit less, finally showing some pull power. Also working the opposite field. I couldn't talk about that Boston series, but that homer hit was very nice. So just seeing him finally use that pull power again, getting to pitches, just a lot, taking pitches too, not trying, like I said, not trying to do too much. Stick to himself. So you don't want to get too high or too low on a guy like Troy. Obviously, been up for around a month now. Don't want to raise the stock too much or drop it too low. So keep steady. If he keeps doing like this, it'll be good. But as long as the Marlins getting production from first base out of him and Wagaman, you can't feel too bad about it. So yeah, gotta like where we're at right now.
It's hard to blame Troy. This is a guy, we all know his story. He led all of minor league baseball in RBI in 2023. He probably deserved a call up then, most definitely deserved a call up last year. So it's hard not to, try a little bit too hard when you finally get that opportunity to show the Marlins front office and the previous 3 regimes, hey, this is what I can do. And, understandably, he struggled a bit. But since, I think you're right, Nate, that series in Boston, he has really started to look a lot more comfortable at the plate, started taking a little bit of pitches, even drawing some walks. And, like you said, it's with Wagaman and Troy. It's almost a perfect platoon situation there at first base, and they're actually utilizing him in both corner outfield spots. So I think his I don't want to jinx anything, but I believe his roster spot is pretty safe for at least the rest of this season. I think they like the versatility he can offer, even though I personally hold my breath a little bit when there's a stinging line drive to either corner when he's out there. I think he's a lot more comfortable at first base, but the Marlins seem to be okay with it, and he should be getting a lot more playing time the rest of the way.
He's in there again tonight for this one, and
left field.
Yeah, the number that I keep looking at, and it has been coming down a little bit, is still his chase rate and how aggressive he has been that's always a complicated part of the adjustment for a guy that was so good at hitting anything in the minor leagues, even when it was outside the zone, just because the stuff isn't quite the same. And to this point, he is by far the highest chase rate out of any hitter to get any meaningful playing time for the Marlins this year. It's at like 41.5% right now of all pitches outside the zone that he's chasing. To put that into context, it's like 6% higher than Derek Hill and Matt Mervis. Those are the guys that are next closest up. And those guys, it goes without saying, they have not had success as hitters at the big league level this year. Connor Norby is the guy that chases a lot, but even he's at like 33%. That's a pretty significant difference even from somebody like Norby. And he himself has had somewhat of a disappointing year as well. It's very hard to be successful at the big league level if you're chasing that much, just because the stuff is so good, even if you feel like you can hit it. And I feel like I've seen those reactions from him where he felt like he was able to get to a pitch, but still, like, the location of it was in a spot where it's like you had no business trying to go after it in the first place. That's part of the adjustment, and you need a lot of reps to do it. And thankfully, he's getting those reps to start making that adjustment.
Yeah, that's the guy for 2 years, played every single day in the minors. So obviously at the first part of his call up, he was not playing every single day, and that definitely I think affected his approach at times. But you can see him now. He played all 3 games in that Toronto series. He had he went 4 for 10 with an RBI, no walks though. Hopefully those will come up soon.
Yeah. We should touch on a couple things from that first game of the series. Ryan Gusto slides into the Cal Quantrill rotation spot. For people that care, Quantrill, kind of I wouldn't even say typical, just a shaky performance with the Braves. He ended up walking 4 or 5 guys and then leaving a little bit early. So that was unusual. The fact that he gave 1 big homer and then a lot of walks and ended up leaving in the 5th inning for the Braves. He's not scheduled or lined up to pitch in this series, so he'll just be here as a spectator these next few days as a member of his new team. And Gusto in his place allows a couple runs early on and then settles in. And then in the 6th inning, again, allows a couple more, able to get through 6 innings. But Shane Bieber. What about Shane Bieber, Isaac? The fact that this is a guy that was one of the best pitchers in baseball for a little bit there, and we haven't seen him much at all the last couple of years due to Tommy John surgery. This is his very first start off of Tommy John, and this is it's kind of eerily similar to that Brandon Woodruff game towards the middle of the season when Woodruff was coming off his shoulder surgery, missing a ton of time, and he picked up right where he left off. It's kind of the same thing here for Bieber. He led. Who got him for that home run? I'll have to refresh this.
No, I thought it was Heriberto. Oh, you mean this game? Sorry, I thought you were talking about the Woodruff game.
Back on Friday. Kind of just one mistake there in that 2nd inning. I'll just double check right now. Yeah, Sanoha gets him in that 2nd inning, and otherwise kind of cruise. So he looked pretty similar to the guy that used to be a top of the rotation sort of guy.
Yeah, I was expecting a higher scoring game with this one with Gusto and Shane Bieber, but man, Shane Bieber looked like Cy Young Shane Bieber that day. He was even making Jacob Marcy look really uncomfortable at the plate. We've seen what Jacob Marcy can do against pretty much any pitcher these last couple months. But yeah, Shane looked outstanding. Gusto ran into trouble almost instantly. It was a little bit tough luck. Some of those hits were a little bit off the end of the bat, but Miami had really no answer for Shane Bieber making his season debut. For Toronto, he obviously was traded to Toronto at the deadline. Bieber just went a beautiful quality start, 6 innings, 2 hits, 1 earned run, which was the Sanoha home run in the 2nd, where you thought, okay, maybe it was just a dominant first inning, but he settled right back in after that and retired. It was a crazy number. I forget what it was, 12 of 14 after that. No one really got on base. He did not walk a single guy. He struck out 9. And Toronto, they're going to be making a deep run. They're going to really depend on Bieber as well. It's going to be a really fun team to follow as we head into October.
As on another tab for a second, just wanted to pull up some Javier Sanoja hype stuff because we shouldn't overlook him. He hit that home run, but more importantly, on Saturday, he did everything he could to keep him in the game. He had a big hit in the 7th inning. He tied it up in the 9th inning. He tied it up again in the 11th inning. And I just wrote a quick piece on the site about it, just taking in perspective how solid he's been. He's on a team that is the youngest team in baseball. He's the youngest hitter that they've had getting regular playing time. I know they just brought up Max Acosta, who is a little bit younger. Among the guys that have actually been on the roster consistently, it's been Sanoja. He's just 22 years old, finally going to turn 23 in about a week. And all of a sudden, what sticks out is the slugging. where you look up and his slugging is like pretty close to league average for a guy that they were just relying on this year, putting the ball in play, playing a million different positions. And he has been doing those things exactly as advertised. The slugging, Nate, has been somewhat of a pleasant surprise where all of a sudden the fact that he's able to pull so many of his fly balls, they don't have to be no doubters, but if they get over the wall, there are other examples across the league of other guys that are really undersized and end up having like surprisingly impactful careers if they're able to like make the most of the power that they have. He's kind of doing it, especially as of late. Things have really ticked up in that department.
Definitely. Ever since that first Yankees game on that wacky Friday, when he hit 2 homers, I don't know what's clicked for him since then, but that Oppo one really sent a message to me personally. Just the fact that I didn't even think he had to do that. Take a fastball from a lefty starter like Carlos Rodon, push to opposite field and get it out to Miami's right field. That's impressive. That guy has really impressed me this entire season. OPS and similar to Eric Weidman in the month of August around the 800 mark. With the glove too, I think we have to talk about that as well. He's been sensational with the glove all season. He brings speed. Any ball in the gap, easy extra bases for him. Has a couple triples this year, of course, that signature celebration when he was pounding his chest. Very intriguing player, like you said, the youngest guy on this team. And just like similar to, I guess, Ryan Desto on the pitching side, just a ball of clay for this hitting staff like Pedro Herrera to just work with. He's crushed it at AAA, crushed it in all levels of the minors, and there's no reason to not play him at this point. He's been playing pretty much every day, it feels like, at third or second, which makes him extremely valuable as well. It will be interesting to see if he can do this consistently. I remember struggled for much of the Dod days at the OPS around 500 something in July. Didn't do too well in June either. But if the Marlins can really find some consistency in this guy, I rather looked up to Jose Altuve as a kid. If they can just get a shell of that consistently from Javier Sanoja, it's going to be tough to slide in, at least up the middle. But I mean, God forbid, Connor Norby continues to struggle at third base. I mean, who knows there? Similar, I guess, Grant Pauly, if he reverts back to his pre-August self when he comes back from injury, there's a lot of time for Javi to play. So it all depends on if he can just stay consistent. But where they're going in this direction, I'm very intrigued. If he can keep hitting for more power, keep doing it with the glove, he's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, since the 24th of July in 24 games, he's slugging 541 in 65 plate appearances. Just not walking a lot. He's slashing 279, 323 with the 541 slugging and 864 OPS for young Javier Sanoja. And yeah, you're absolutely right. I think if Connor Norby does, in fact, struggle a little bit more, you could see a lot more playing time for Mr. Sanoja.
To Robert's point, I was kind of not a fan of the fact that he made the opening day roster in the first place because I knew he wasn't going to get consistent playing time, and he really hasn't for so much of the year. There have been little stretches where he plays a week straight because somebody has a nagging injury, like when X went down for a little bit and Otto went down for a little bit, and then other than that, he's been platooned a lot. He's been moving around, and for him to hit that well for a guy that was accustomed to, similar to Troy, similar to a lot of other like former prospects, he's accustomed to playing every day, and then all of a sudden in reduced playing time at a harder level than you've ever been at before, like I thought he would fail. And there was stretches early on where the numbers actually did look kind of shaky. So much credit to him to actually figuring that out and being able to handle it even without having the luxury of regular consistent reps. So he's exceeded my expectations already, especially when you take that into account. As we bring in Alex Krutchik from the ballpark for our Marlins press box report for this series opener. Oh boy, where do we want to start with Krutchik on here? Facing the Braves, I guess. This is the last time that these teams go head to head, Krutchik, this year, and it's the history is what it is, where the Braves have every single season that we've known each other, and then years before that, before we knew each other, the Braves have the Marlins number seemingly no matter what's going on here. So I guess this is kind of, do you think it's any extra motivation for this team that they finally have a chance to finish ahead of them in the standings for the first time in a gazillion years and actually beat them head to head, given that the Braves themselves are kind of in a shaky situation on their own?
Yeah, I don't know how the players would feel about this, but I know that just from like a fan perspective, at this point, like the Braves kind of won against the Marlins this year. I don't care how the head-to-head matches up or how the general standings match up, but but it still stings 2 weeks later. Now that the Marlins went into Atlanta really hot, needed to take 3 of 5 there, even 2 of 5 would have been manageable depending on how they did the rest of the road trip, and Atlanta just really took it to them. So, I kind of even forgot that Atlanta was still behind the Marlins in the standings, because at the end of the day, they still did what they had to do against Miami, and Miami couldn't do what they had to do against Atlanta. So it still feels like a loss. But talking to Clayton earlier in the game, they're definitely excited to get their lick back tonight, even though at this point, again, the playoff chances are a lot lower than they were a couple of weeks ago. But, at least it's at home, where the Braves still have the Marlins number, just not by as much of a margin. It just really stinks still 2 weeks ago. Like, there were a couple of games there that it really doesn't feel like the Braves played a whole lot better. It's just the Marlins just lost it. I think that's the worst part is I know I'm rambling here, but it feels like the Braves usually just beat the Marlins. I feel like there were a couple of games in Atlanta a couple of weeks ago where the Marlins beat themselves, and they could have won those games. So we'll see how it goes this week.
Braves won 4 out of those 5 games for anybody that's unfamiliar. And so, several games in there where some questionable pitching decisions that backfired horribly, but also the fact that the Marlins just didn't hit particularly well over the course of that one. We do have a pretty encouraging injury update on Ryan Weathers, who has been out for half the season at this point. Finally, there's light at the end of the tunnel. You saw him a little bit pitching, throwing live batting practice before the game today. And he's finally going to get out there on a rehab assignment this coming week. So all of a sudden, it's about 2 weeks and counting until Ryan Weathers rejoins this rotation for a guy that there was a lot of hype about when he was available. And now it's kind of a similar pattern to last year, right? Where at the very end of the year, he's able to come back from an injury and kind of remind people why they were excited in the first place.
Yeah, it's nice. It's a common pattern among a lot of these guys on the team, honestly. Like Yuri Perez came back 2 months before he was originally supposed to. Griffin Conine is progressing a lot quicker than people thought. Clayton McCullough had a lot of great things to say about the training staff, the nutrition staff, the coaching staff, and the players themselves, and their ability to bounce back way quicker than they thought. Because Ryan Weathers himself said today, he was surprised at how quickly it's been, and he's blessed that he's able to even think about pitching again this year, because he thought that he was done for the year. So that was great to see. It's great to see that. I was honestly surprised that he had his whole schedule mapped out already this far in advance and told us about it, because it's not only that he's beginning his rehab on Saturday, but then he's only got one more scheduled after that, and then he's ready to go. My question to you guys, do you guys notice that these rehab assignments for pitchers are getting quicker? I don't remember pitchers going out there for 2 outings and then coming back. Is that, well, first of all, am I imagining that? And if I'm not imagining that, is that just because they're doing a lot more live BPs before they even send those guys back up there?
Yeah, I think the latter case, where the fact that he's been this stretched out in live BP. I know he went 2 innings in the previous one. I presume that he got closer to 3-ish innings today, or the equivalent of that in terms of total pitches. That's different than it used to be. It used to be that as soon as these guys are able to, they face live hitters kind of one time, just for the minimal amount of reps, they used to go out on a rehab assignment right after that and completely build up over the course of a rehab assignment, which to me was always kind of curious anyway. It just means more time spent at minor league facilities, more time spent on the road, where you would think that these guys are in better position to get back. And well, one, it's a more comfortable position if they're rehabbing either at the big league ballpark or at the team facility itself. It kind of seems intuitive and so maybe overdue that they didn't already do stuff like this in the past, but it is a pretty big departure from even a couple of years ago, where I agree. I do remember some guys 4 rehab starts or 5 rehab starts just to get stretched out gradually. And I like this one better. I feel like this makes more sense from a player's perspective.
And I know it was extended because how poorly he pitched, but even in 2023 with Cueto, I know it was extended because of how bad he was, but I think he was scheduled for 4 or 5 rehab starts, regardless of how he was pitching. And then the fact that he was just I think he had allowed more home runs than innings pitched through his first 5 rehab assignments that they just made. I think he ended up making 10 rehab starts with Jacksonville.
That's unheard of. I think the Marlins also saw where they were in the standings, and they were probably going to just keep them up there for as long as we can.
Yeah, precisely.
You're bringing back some painful memories of me trying to convince people that Cueto is washed. Cueto is washed. Like the number, it's not just the numbers. I'm watching these rehab games. He's got nothing left. Trying to convince people that I don't care how much money they're paying him. It doesn't make sense. And they brought him back anyway. And I still vividly remember as soon as he came back from the injury, he shoved his first couple outings, and then he went back to being the wash version of Johnny Cueto again.
Yeah, I got that article from I received the article that you wrote, Eli, on how he does not deserve to be on a major league rotation. As soon as he started shoving, I think it was against the Braves, he threw 6 shutout innings right off the IL. Oh, this aged well, blah blah blah, from a few fellow local beat writers in Miami. So and then right away he went back to being ass. Good times.
Mm-hmm. Just to do a quick roundup of the injury situation, in addition to weathers, we got the news today about Norby, that Norby is going to be playing 2 more rehab games tomorrow and Wednesday. And from there, I am quite confident that he would rejoin the team in New York. So I look forward to chopping it up with Connor Norby when he does so, coming off of his hamate surgery, right around 6 weeks removed from that surgery when he comes back. Krawczyk mentioned in his report today that both Stowers and Paulie are doing some light baseball activities. So that's good. That's a sign of progress. I would certainly point to them coming back this year, but still a little while away from fully ramping up and returning to action themselves. They'll probably have to go on little rehab assignments. Anthony Bender ruled out for the year. Jesus Tinoco, he's going to be undergoing some surgery relatively soon on his flexor tendon. And then other than that, and then, of course, as you see on the bottom of that graphic with Ryan Weathers on the 60-day IL, he'll come back. Griffin Conine nearing his return to play situation as well. That's going to be a longer rehab assignment, but assuming no setbacks, Conine will be back towards the end of the season. So that actually it gives me an excuse to go back to this comment from a little while ago about Heriberto Hernandez, that he's come back down to earth of late as his spot safe on the roster, and maybe not for the rest of the year. Now that, depending on if all these guys get healthy. Now, the lesson of this year is as soon as somebody gets healthy, somebody else, unfortunately, almost always goes down with some sort of ailment as well. So you really can't count on all these guys coming back at the same time. If they do all come back at the same time, then even the expanded September roster would put Hernandez in a tough spot. And I remember just a few weeks ago, the idea that Heriberto might be squeezed off the roster before Eric Wagaman. I would never have seen that coming. I was of the opinion that it should be kind of the other way around. But in a recent performance, all of a sudden, they're kind of meeting in the middle in terms of their overall production just based on that. So, yeah, we'll have to take it one step at a time. Now that I bring up this graphic, the one other thing I'm going to be monitoring is whether VMJ gets a real second shot, even in a part-time role on this team. Like tonight, they're sending poor Joey Weimer out there against a right-hander. He did not look particularly good against a left-hander when he made his Marlins debut against Garrett Crochet, and he hasn't played very much since at all. So, there are a lot of interesting guys now, all kind of converging on this roster at the same time. So where there will be some interesting decisions down the stretch in terms of who they have room for and who they don't.
If I had to guess, you have to assume that VMJ, he got a shot earlier in the year, but not a real opportunity, in my opinion. They got hurt yet again after getting hurt in spring training, now getting hurt in the middle of the regular season. He's been back with AAA Jacksonville, been doing all right. You have to assume that he will be one of the 2 September call-ups or September moves that they make. I don't know if it'll be in favor of Joey Weimer going down. So, he's one of Peter's guys, so I'm not sure what they're going to do, but it just wouldn't make much sense to have both of them on there, even though they bat from the different sides of the plate. But all the right-handed hitting outfielders you have, ironically, it's the next year is going to be a lot of lefties, but without Stowers, it's right-handed heavy. I assume VMJ is one of those September call-ups when rosters do expand on September 1st. And it just brings you back to the times when the roster would expand to 40 guys, 40-man active roster. I do miss those days. I think they went way too slow. I think instead of just 2 men, it should be at least 5. But just 2, that's a little bit boring. What they cut the difference by that many? I didn't like that.
I agree. Yeah, that they should split the difference in some way, because I remember times when you talk about how many prospects could come up when the roster's expanded. Now we don't have any of that sort of conversation. Like there's just it doesn't really change very much at all. It's just how many more guys coming back from injuries are going to be able to fit at the same time. It's not.
Yeah. And
It's very
most teams just
similar.
take advantage of it and get more pitching depth, usually, not even prospects. A lot of teams just call up a couple of bullpen arms to fill those slots. They don't even use them on potential prospects or call-ups for September, unfortunately. So it's not what it used to be.
Yeah, I guess the last thing I want to get with Krutchik on is not to jinx it, but Sandy has been very good each of his last couple outings, and he's due to pitch in this series as well against the Braves team. He kind of has a mixed track record against them one way or the other. We've seen this before this year where there's sometimes been spots where he has back-to-back good outings, but he hasn't been able to reel off 3 in a row that look really great right here. What is your level of curiosity in terms of how close he is to actually getting back to being a reliable starter for this team after seeing the last 2 went really well? But if he does have another similar performance against his Braves team, or how much is that going to sway you in terms of actually believing that this is a guy that is closer to the guy that we remember him before surgery?
Well, if he goes out and has another good start against the Braves, it would definitely add to my confidence about him. I've never truly believed that we lost the best version of Sandy. I've always thought that a lot of it was mental, and even the physical parts, I think, were just more that he had to relearn how to do certain things, or maybe certain things that he doesn't know how to do anymore, and he'll just have to reinvent certain smaller things that he does. Like I off the top of my head, he's not that great right now, and he throws a lot of curveballs. When he's able to get quality outs without using that in his repertoire, he's a lot better. So I think just reinventing himself a little bit, and I think that he's shown you that he can, because you've seen those outings where those two things are mutually exclusive. If he can do something against this Braves lineup, it would definitely instill more confidence. I mean, I think it's still there. Just very mental for him right now.
There's a look at the game logs. If you go all the way to the right, it kind of simplifies it. His game score and the fact that his last 2 outings have been right up there against the Red Sox on that road trip, where he was perfect. I think through the first 4-ish innings of that one, and then most recently against the Cardinals, that wasn't quite as perfect, but he had even more swing and miss in that one. I thought his changeup in his last outing was pretty close to a vintage changeup that we've seen from Sandy in terms of both the location of it and also the even the velo of it was up considerably from what we've seen this season. So I'm once again getting hopeful that this could actually stick for a little bit. And the Braves are going to be an interesting test because, as you see, when we faced the Braves a couple weeks ago during that series, it was another struggle for him. I think he allowed both those home runs to Ozuna. That was pretty poetic, allowing 2 homers to the guy that he was originally traded for all those years ago. And aside from that, just been kind of sloppy with his control. So a good opportunity for him to exact revenge on that team that made him look kind of mediocre a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, man, it's just been a tough lineup for a lot of off the field stuff with Sandy and the Braves too. Ever since you go back to the 2020 National League Division Series too, Acuna got him right away. There's just sort of been some heat between Sandy and this lineup. And unfortunately, a lot of the same guys are still there. The Braves know how to lock up their stars, so I'm going to be very intrigued to watch Sandy take on this lineup. He does generally perform better at home against the Braves, but still, it's with Ronald Acuna at the top, it's going to be tough.
On previous streams, I'd been bringing up the wild card race just because the Marlins are close enough to dream about it. And even though I've moved on from that, they have to win 1 series for me to even entertain that possibility again. Instead, the reality is they have a better chance at winning the draft lottery than they do of making the playoffs. I think any way that you look at it at this moment, this is the first time we've looked at this all summer, is where they stand in that regard. About a 4% chance of winning the lottery as things are currently constituted. There's not much separation between these teams outside of the White Sox, but all these other draft lottery eligible teams, the ones that can actually win it, there can be a lot of movement here. There's this series, if nothing else, has pretty significant draft lottery odds expectations. Nate, it was a disaster for the Marlins in the last draft lottery last year, where they were one of the very worst teams in baseball, and all they got was the 7th overall pick out of it. Are you allowing yourself to still be kind of interested in this race this time around, after getting burned last year, but understanding that it could be pretty significant if they do get that first overall pick, and they're no matter where they finish, if it's outside the playoff picture, they're gonna have a chance. Do you think they're due for a better outcome this time around after last year's really tough luck?
Well, you asked me if I'm interested. Definitely interested. Hopeful? Absolutely not. After everything I've seen from this organization, after being, engulfed with them for about 15 years of my life now, and now I'm 20, have not seen much to give me that hope that they're going to get anything to swing their way. I honestly can't remember the last time the Marlins have got lucky with anything, relatively speaking. So certainly intrigued, but who knows? Maybe their luck will finally swing. But I guess the pro in all this is that they did get pick 7, and they still got the best college hitter in the draft in Ivor Arquette. So I trust whatever pick the Marlins get at this point, that Frankie Player is going to do his job and get a good player for the Marlins. I wish that the Marlins would continue to win, because the New York Mets, we talked about a couple weeks ago, they are absolutely crumbling. Here come the Reds out of nowhere trying to get that last wild card spot. So it would have been perfect. Crutch had brought up that 5 games disaster in Atlanta. The Marlins, if that just swung a couple games swung Miami's way, and Clay McCullough makes a little bit of better decisions, then we could be talking about that wild card again. But either way, I think maybe this is the time, but you never want to get too hopeful with anything that goes on here.
Yeah. Go ahead, Krutchik.
No, I was going to say, well, a couple things. First, in terms of the Mets, it does set up perfectly for the Marlins to break their hearts again. They have the final series here in Miami. I remember back in 07 and 08, they had the last couple series against the Mets 2 years in a row, and eliminated the Mets 2 years in a row. One of them was the last series ever at Shea Stadium. So I do hope the Marlins keep winning and keep breathing down the Mets' necks a little bit, because I think that could be a very fun storyline going into the final weekend. And in terms of the draft lottery, I don't know. I kind of echoed the same thing last year. First of all, these draft classes are deep enough to, it's not the NBA. If you draft 7 and you have a good development team, it really doesn't matter. Unless there's like an absolute can't miss number 1, but you can't count on you getting number 1 regardless. And then on the other end of the coin, the Marlins have had a whole bunch of top 5 picks, or at least top 7 picks, and they don't have much to show for it, because up until the last couple of years, they haven't had a good development system. And we still don't actually know if they do have a good development system. I think it's better, but we won't actually know for another couple of years. So I kind of said the same thing last year. I'm like, I don't really care if they pick 7th or 15th. Just show me that you can do something with any of these picks, really.
Before getting into the lineups, I actually just want to throw up the probables for probable starters in this series. We mentioned Sandy. We know that Gusto is getting at least one more turn for sure, and it could be several more than that. It looks like it's really only a question when Ryan Weathers comes back that Gusto might be the weakest link that gets bumped out. We'll see how that goes. Nate, I wanted to get your thoughts on Strider, Spencer Strider. This is a guy that a couple of years ago was a consensus pick for most people in terms of the most dominant starting pitcher in baseball, the guy that was destined to win Cy Youngs, that had already had the strikeouts behind him. And then the question is, can he put everything else together? And last year, mostly last year due to his elbow surgery, misses sometime this year due to that and a second injury. And it looked like he was kind of settling in a little bit right before the All-Star break. But he comes to town, he's been terrible, like 3 straight outings in a row heading into this one, getting absolutely barreled. It's not even a matter of throwing strikes, but just not being good at all. His velo has not totally come back. So he enters this. It looks like a typo, but he enters this with like a 5.5 ERA on the season at this point. It's not that far away from Sandy level struggles, but this is a guy that's supposed to be entering the prime of his career. And he's for a rotation with the Braves that has been decimated by injuries. He's been the guy that has actually been now available for most of the season, but still is that's been a pretty big factor in why the Braves are underperforming. The fact that Strider is a really mediocre pitcher, and just not recognizable stats wise from the guy that he was before surgery.
You just said it. Very, very Sandy-esque. A guy that had a power fastball, looked like he was destined to dominate the NL East. And then he gets elbow surgery, like you just said, and here we go. Very Sandy-esque. All of a sudden, just really, I mean, a guy that lived off so many whiffs and striking so many guys out, all of a sudden getting barreled up like crazy. I guess Sandy obviously didn't rely on the strikeout as much as Spencer Strider did, but still, a guy with such a power fastball and good off speed, just not the same guy. And I think a lot of it comes down to confidence, like I've talked about Sandy in the past. Strider kind of more, what's the word? I guess elegant on the mound than Sandy. Just really, just a sturdy guy. That guy's absolutely shredded, but just a different demeanor from him. So I'm very intrigued to see how he's going to do against his Marlins team. Like MJS says, you probably will strike out at least 12 guys just because he is facing the Marlins. But a guy that you really want to see lead your rotation, similar to Sandy. A lot of mirrors with Sandy actually. Like Grant Holmes goes down, a lot of these guys from Atlanta go down, and then you're like, wow, at least we have Strider. And then I guess just similar to what's been going on with Atlanta the entire season, nothing that you would have expected a couple of years ago. I still think he can rebound, just like I still believe in Sandy. But who would have thought? It's sad. That guy's really fun to watch when he's on, not when he's playing the Marlins, but just such a power fastball, such a wipeout stuff. And hope he figures it out. Obviously, not today. I hope he does not strike out 12. But it's going to be intriguing to see what the Braves can do to fix him.
Last start allowed 7 runs, all of them earned to the White Sox. Before that, he allowed 8 runs, all of them earned to the imploding Mets that have been pretty bad offensively for a lot of that stretch. So I'm not following it close enough to know exactly where things stand, but it's a 3-start stretch that's been probably worse than anything that even Sandy has gone through this year. So it's a reminder that, man, other teams have these big enigmas on the pitching side that they cannot seem to figure out with Strider. But he's obviously a big part of their future. He's still locked up for a few years, which was supposed to be a problem for the Marlins and other teams in the NL East. But man, it might take a whole offseason to get that really figured out. As we pull up this Marlins lineup for tonight, I mentioned before, Joey Wiemer in here. I don't know exactly why. I think maybe he's just a little bit rusty and they want to get him some reps, but the fact that he's in there against any sort of right-hander kind of surprises me a little bit. I don't think that's going to go great. Part of that may have been getting Heriberto a day off, or part of a day off, to kind of reset some things and get back on track. Who knows? But other than that, that top 5 looks pretty familiar at this point. Jacob Marcy is your everyday number 2 hitter for the Marlins. He continues to do something good every single game. He usually does something big in those games at some point that actually makes a difference between winning or losing, as he did yesterday with that bases clearing triple. So, and it's Augustine behind the plate. Kravchuk, it's been about as rough a stretch all year for Augustine defensively as we've seen over this homestand. Has felt like rock bottom for him in terms of the combination of the pass balls and the not throwing runners out. And then tonight he's with Eddie, and that's one of several pitchers on the staff that doesn't really hold runners. So we're kind of, you think this might be getting towards the end. This final month, is it looking like, is there any hope that Augustine kind of clicks as a catcher, or do you think that this is kind of the final month of the experiment before they figure out any other way to utilize him defensively?
This was my own guess with how stubborn this organization can be. Very, very inventive organization, but also very stubborn at times. I could see them still going into spring with him as the catcher, and I could see them even going into April with him as the catcher, unless a very unexpected external move is made. Just because, remember, we all thought the same thing about Xavier Edwards last year, and not only was there not an in-season change, but even when this season started, it took them 2 months for them to finally switch over to second base. And it's not often that I will claim to know more than the experts, but like every single person on Twitter saw what it took Peter Bendix a year and a half to see, which is, hey, why don't you just move next to the other side of second base over there? So I could see them still going with Augustine going into next year, but if there's no change, they're going to have to eventually just give up and make him play first or DH. The good thing is he's so good on offense that you could justify having him just play DH full time and still get a lot of production out of him.
If you warrant a meltdown like that, I wouldn't say meltdown, just a flip out like that from the legend Tommy Hutton, like he did when he missed that frame against the Cardinals. I think it's getting to a point, right? I mean, obviously the Marlins are starting to crumble, like we've all talked about, but you have a guy in the minors and Joe Mack. Obviously, understand they don't want to start his clock right now. I guess you let it ride out towards the end of the year. Liam Hicks has been all right at the plate. I know he was cold for a while, but like Crutchett said, his bat is so good, even though he has been slumping recently, not getting on base as much as you'd like. I guess just let it ride out for the end of the year. But they are stubborn. I think Crutchett brings up a great point in it's Xavier Edwards' case. There was no reason at that point. It made so much sense. I don't know if they're going to let it get to the point where it's like it's right in their face and they have to do it, like what it was with Etson. But I'd say at least sure let it ride out for this year. But over the offseason, I want to hear reports of him at least trying to get work at first base, because we talked about it so much this season that first base has been a hole on this team. You really can't rely on Wagaman. And as much as I love Troy, you can't rely on Troy completely. So just get him some reps at first base. If you can't do it, fine, let him DH. But I feel like it's worth a shot.
I just tried on the fly to convert the Tommy video clip into audio and put it into our soundboard. Let me see if it works the way that I hope it does.
And what it does, we've seen a couple of instances tonight, it makes Sandy throw more pitches. See, to me, don't try to frame that pitch. Catch it before you try to frame it.
There it was. That was, yeah.
I love when Tommy shows that he's still got a little bit of fight left on him. He's so good. He's so timeless.
Yeah, that's the immediate feedback I got. People want more of that from Tommy. He doesn't do enough of those rants, even if it's just like a couple lines like that. That's the dose of honesty and real passion that people love about him. Just a quick look at this Braves lineup right here. A lot of the usual suspects. Acuna is back. Acuna, I think he missed the previous series, that entire 5-game set, and yet the Braves were still able to dismantle the Marlins pretty easily. Otherwise, it's a lot of those. Drake Baldwin is the guy to keep an eye on because he's been Marlins killer already in his rookie season, especially during that previous series. They're missing Austin Riley. He's going to be out for the rest of the year, and then Nick Allen can't really hit it all at shortstop, but otherwise, yeah, a lot of familiar faces for this Braves team. It should be noted that Jurickson Profar in that previous series, he was pretty effective, including robbing Gus of a home run, going way over the wall in left field. That's one of my more vivid memories of that 5-game series and what he was able to do. And Nate, Michael Harris II, he was kind of heating up entering that previous series. Now he's batting in the cleanup spot for this Braves team. And despite the overall numbers being very meh, and the fact that this is a guy that is known more for his defense, like he is fully correcting all the damage that he did during the first half of the season. One of the worst qualified hitters in baseball the first half, and now he is completely evening out at a time where all of a sudden he's become a guy that you really have to plan around, despite all these other names that are more known for their bat than he is.
Yeah, just like you, I vividly remember last stream discussing about if his huge contract extension, the Alex Anthopoulos Classic, it was too premature just based on how awful he was in the first half. Goes off against some runs. He's been going off ever since. Just watching that guy get a high fastball and absolutely crank it out of the yard to the chop house in right field. As much as I dislike the Braves, that's a thing of beauty. It never gets old to watch. Still an amazing defender, and if he really just put the ball in play, he was striking out so much earlier this season, working the ball to all fields. That guy's special. And just up and down the order, man. It looks like the Braves that we know and dislike, to be honest with you. Matt Olson's still Matt Olson. Acuna's back. Hopefully stays that way. And Marcell Ozuna, they really got a pitcher on that guy. He killed him last time in Truist Park. And even Jurickson Profar, like you said, Eli. That guy was lethal. It gets a little bit easier towards the bottom once you get past Drake Baldwin. Ozzy obviously still has not been that guy this year. Just crazy to see that in years past he'd be that guy and where Jurickson Profar is supposed to be. And then you got Nacho Alvarez Jr., who I'm going to be completely honest, I had no idea was even on the Braves roster before they played him. I thought that was like a Key and Peele guy from the East-West Bowl, Nacho Alvarez Jr. And then you have Nick Allen, who's swinging a pool noodle. So outside of once you get past Drake Baldwin, it gets a little bit easier. But Michael Harris and Ronald Acuna Jr., especially in Miami, two guys you really don't want to mess with.
Okay, let's head right to that final segment. It is now prediction time.
This is prediction time.
I think we're going to win a lot of games, a lot more games than you think we're going to win this year.
final segment of the show where we predict how many games the Marlins will win, who will be the series MVP as determined by win probability added, keeping the leaderboard on fishonfirst.com all season long for our staffers, our super subs, and our live stream guests when we have live stream guests. So our own Hector Rodriguez, he is slightly ahead of everybody else. He had a perfect series, just like I did in the previous one against the Blue Jays, with Bo Bichette winning MVP. Maybe not season-long American League MVP, but at least for this series, he was pretty effective this past weekend. So you have until first pitch to leave your predictions on fishonfirst.com or in our Marlins Discord server, and I will keep track of those points all year long. I'm just below the cutoff on here, really out of contention at this point, but I want to just keep the focus on guys that are doing a good enough job to stay in the mix as we come down the stretch of the series. So, yeah, I can start the music, and then we'll have Nate lead us off for the predictions of this 3-game set, the final time that the Marlins and Braves face each other this season.
I think the Marlins will find their groove again against an Atlanta team that's had their number for what seems like a decade now. The guy leading them tonight, Edward Cabrera, had his best performance of the year last time you saw these Braves, season high 11 strikeouts. I think he's going to get 10 today. This Braves lineup has been heating up as of late, but Eddie has their number. Marlins stay 2 out of 3, get back on track.
Okay, from the ballpark, Alex Krutchik, your series predictions.
I've got the Marlins taking 2 out of 3, and I've got, oh my God, Eric Wagman.
He's able to squeeze that in just under the wire. 2 out of 3. Eric Wagman as series MVP. In my case, I need to stick with it with the recent trend of this Marlins team. 6 straight series losses until they prove me otherwise. I'll have them losing a 7th straight one to this Braves team. That would clinch the season series for the Braves for the 11th straight time that the Braves have won head-to-head against the Marlins over the course of a season. And I think that is going to continue here. So for series MVP, well, we spent a few minutes trashing him, but when that is the case, this is a situation where maybe Spencer Strider flips things around. It really could not get any worse than it has been for him in recent weeks. He's going against a Marlins lineup that's missing some key pieces, and he's going to have the platoon advantage against a lot of these hitters tonight. So I think the conditions are right. If Spencer Strider is going to flash the Strider of old, he's going to do it tonight in this setting, in this series opener. So I think that is one of the wins the Braves get, led by their nominal ace, even though he has not pitched like one whatsoever this year. Braves 2 out of 3. Spencer Strider, series MVP. And that's been our show, Fish on First Live, presented by About the Fans. The promo code all across the screen during the course of our program, FOF10. Use that at checkout, save 10% off your order, and get dripped out just like me. Just like that. All right. So first pitch coming up from Miami pretty shortly, along with Nate Karsmer, Alex Krutchik, Isaac Azut earlier. I am Eli Sussman. We're going to have another stream for the Mets series on Thursday, and then stay tuned because we're thinking about a pretty radical shift in the formatting and scheduling of the show starting next week. But I will keep you guys updated on that so that you can always tune in and enjoy what we do over here. So thanks again for the support. As always, go fish.
Fish on First Live is presented by About the Fans. We've partnered with them this season on a brand new merchandise collection featuring t-shirts, polos, hats, and other accessories that Marlins fans will absolutely love. Head on over to aboutthefans.com to shop the FOF collection. Use our special coupon code FOF10 to save 10% off your order. Enter code FOF10 at checkout to save 10% and continue supporting what we do over here.